Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm going to allow another minute or so here to allow everyone to join, but would like to start promptly at 6:30. Be respectful of everyone's time, so give them another minute and then we'll get started. All right, well, it's 6:30. Thank you, everyone, for joining this evening. We've got a few of us on the line here representing this project who I think are turning on their videos now. I do want to start also by just letting everyone know the meeting is being recorded via Zoom and will be uploaded following its completion to Anne Arundel County website for opportunity for others to view and provide comment. So without further ado, we'll get started. Introduce you to the team here and then give you an overview of kind of how we expect the meeting to go. And then give everyone a chance who was nice enough to join us tonight to have a chance to speak any questions or concerns they have. So my name is Dan Haney. I work with Bowler Engineering. I'm a professional engineer who's worked on the Chick-fil-A account for about 4 years now. I've worked on this project in particular for a couple years and excited to be in front of you all tonight. We also have my colleague Andrew Stein, who is a professional engineer and been working on the Chick-fil-A team for more years than I have. I think upwards of 10 now. So he's here as well to provide support from an engineering standpoint. We have Brent Edmiston from Chick-fil-A. He's the development manager for this region and will be able to speak to more things related to Chick-fil-A standards and operations, as well as desire to be here with you guys tonight. And finally, I wanted to also call out, we have Amanda Fiedler on the line. So thank you for joining us. I know some of you had hoped she would be here, so she's made an effort to join and will be available for questions at the end of the call as well. So overview of kind of how we expect. I give you some ground rules for the Zoom and then kind of get an overview of how the meeting will go, and we'll get to the project. So we're all here tonight for the community meeting for the proposed Chick-fil-A at 1500 Governor Ritchie Highway, Route 2 in Arnold. The Anne Arundel County meeting ID unique code is 729136 for anyone wanting to record that. We're trying to be, like I said before, respectful of everyone's time and keep this to about an hour. So we'll have an opportunity to continue to field any questions that we didn't get to today via the upload on the county website. A reminder for anyone who is just joining, the meeting will be recorded and uploaded after. So for kind of just the Zoom rules here, be appreciative if everyone could just stay muted during the length of the presentation to eliminate any background noise, and we'll let you know when we'll open the field for questions. When we get to that section of the meeting, we'd ask that you go to the participants tab at the bottom, and there should be a raise hand icon. For those of you that have a comment or question, please raise your hand, and then we will unmute you and call you individually to speak your question, or if you would prefer, you can enter it into the chat, which we can also keep for our records. If anyone has any questions about how to do that between now and when we get there, feel free to type questions into the chat and we can try and address. When you do go to ask your question, please provide your name and affiliation, your mailing address, email, and phone. At the conclusion of the meeting, we will be providing those who attended with the meeting minutes, as well as responses to any questions that were not answered on the call. So without further ado, we're going to get into the project here, and I'm going to share my screen. So for those of you that are joining on a computer, should be able to see what we're sharing. So on my screen here, as long as everyone can see it, we have an aerial view of the existing site. As many of you know, it's located at 1500 Governor Ritchie Highway, adjacent to the existing CVS store and gas station, as well as the residencies on the western side of the site or behind it. The existing site is comprised of a single lot that's a little over 6 acres. Within that, there's really 3 kind of parcels, one being the CVS is approximately a 2-acre lot with a 13,000 square foot building and associated improvements. You have the proposed Chick-fil-A lease area, which I've labeled here as site. It's approximately 2.3 acres of undeveloped split zoned property. Is mostly zoned C3 or general commercial and partially zoned residential R2. The remaining portion of the property is to the southeast or plan right of the site, and that is an existing forest conservation easement that's approximately 1.8 acres. So as I mentioned, the overall site is split zoned, C3 general commercial and R2 residential, with a zoning line that splits the Chick-fil-A property approximately 50 feet from the forest conservation easement. Chick-fil-A or a drive-through restaurant is permitted use on the commercial zoned property. Public utilities, public water is available to the site via an existing water main in Route 2. And then the site is not served by public sewer, so a septic field or septic design would be required to serve the site. There are some environmental features existing on the site. They are comprised of 8 specimen trees within the Chick-fil-A lease area, as well as additional trees on the surrounding, within the forest conservation easement and directly adjacent to the site. There are also steep slopes directly behind the Sunoco gas station and then scattered throughout the forest conservation easement area. There are no wetlands, streams, historical artifacts, archaeological resources, or critical areas located on the site. And then, as I mentioned, the area to the right of the Chick-fil-A lease area is an existing forest conservation easement per deed reference, LIBOR 27583, folio 462. And as I mentioned, I'll send these notes out after, so you don't need to put everything down. But the easement was recorded in an effort to provide forest conservation for the overall site, including CVS development and the future development of the lease area in question. And lastly, the development does not propose to encroach within the forest con easement. So that's kind of an overview of the existing site. Since it's an undeveloped site, there are no existing access points, which we'll get into here as we transition. So I'm going to flip my screen here and show you the proposed site plan, which was provided to you all as a part of our mailers. Walk through kind of what the site is proposed to look like, how it's accessed, and go through a couple of the major features of it. So the Chick-fil-A proposes to develop the site with an approximately 2,600 square foot drive-through only restaurant with associated drive-through canopies, parking, landscape areas, stormwater management, and various other site amenities. The site will include 53 parking spaces throughout the site, and will be accessed via 2 points, which are both new accesses. So one will be a proposed right in, right out on Route 2. The proposal of this entrance will include improvements to the SHA right-of-way in the form of a deceleration and acceleration lane in addition to what exists today. So it will be extending or likely extending the existing lane, as well as providing a specific Chick-fil-A decel and acceleration lane. The other access point will be provided by connecting the private drive behind the existing CVS to the Chick-fil-A property, as noted, as shown here on the bottom of the plan. So that will not be a public, or onto a public road directly. However, it can be accessed internally from CVS, from Arnold Road, and from Route 2. In terms of stormwater management provided on the site, stormwater quality management will be provided via 3 microbiome retention areas or facilities to provide environmental site design to the maximum extent practicable. These facilities are shown outlined on the perimeter of the site, basically right of the drive-through, and then also adjacent to the SHA right-of-way. They will be used to treat all the stormwater requirement based on new development requirements for developing the undeveloped land. And then quantity management, or management of the flow leaving the site, will be provided by additional stormwater management features adjacent to the quality measures. These facilities will reduce or maintain the existing flow leaving the site during specific design storms as required by the county. So all that means is the condition at which the site is outfalling today and the water that it produces will either be reduced or maintained through the development. Water service to the site is provided via connection to an existing water line in Route 2. A water meter will be provided and connected to the building. Sewer, as I mentioned, will be required to be provided via septic field, as public sewer is not available. You can see on the site plan here, there are dry wells located throughout the site away from other site features to provide septic design that will serve the site for many years to come, and as well designed to accommodate that. There are some modifications required as a part of this development. Those were included within the package sent out to everyone as a part of the mailer. So the main modifications are to remove specimen trees on site that would otherwise inhibit development. So 2 specimen trees are proposed to be removed within the Chick-fil-A lease area. They're located, one is right at the top of the building here, adjacent to the proposed entrance, and one is in the center of the drive-through order point canopy. The other 2 trees are located within the SHA easement area, and we anticipate that improvements required by SHA would require these trees to be removed. One of the other modifications that would be required is disturbance of steep slopes. As you can see, there are existing contours or slope mapping shown on this plan view. There's steep slopes adjacent to the existing gas station coming down into the site. So developing the site would require to fill through that area in order to tie into Route 2. So, and then the only other potential modification could be related to forest conservation. If any additional forest retention requirements are required as a part of the county's latest requirements for clearing a forest. However, based on our understanding, the forest conservation has been met via the reservation of the easement that's existing today. So lastly, I just want to walk through kind of how the site operates to give everyone an understanding of kind of how Chick-fil-A operates. And again, when we get to questions, Brent, I'm sure would be happy to speak a little bit more about their goals here. So as I mentioned, the site is accessed via right in off Route 2 as the main access point. Upon entering the site, all traffic would be forced to turn right into the site. There would be convenient parking for mobile order pickup just in front of the site, approximately 20 parking spaces. And then separate from that, an isolated drive aisle would take you down to the drive-through entrance. The drive-through is proposed to be kind of the state-of-the-art, the latest Chick-fil-A standard drive-through, which allows them to, it's called dual flex lane fulfillment, meaning they can serve both 2 lanes through the drive-through to expedite their time. It's isolated from the parking layout, so when the drive-through gets full, it doesn't impact the adjacent parking fields. The trash enclosure is located between the drive-through and the building, as I'm highlighting on the plan here. And then there's additional overflow parking for employees farther to the plan left and closer to CVS. Upon exiting or going through the drive-through and picking up your food, you have an opportunity to exit southbound on Route 2 towards Route 50, which, as I mentioned, there'll be a proposed acceleration lane to accommodate that, or you can loop back through the site and exit through the existing CVS onto Arnold Road. So try to make that quick for you to get through the kind of existing conditions and what we are proposing here. So we have, I know a lot of people took time out of their night to join us because they have, comments and questions. So again, appreciate you joining us. I will pause for a second just to to see if Brent or Andrew have anything to add to what I've outlined. And if not, we will open the floor shortly for questions.
I don't have anything. This is Andrew Stein with Bowler. Dan, I don't have anything additional to add to your presentation. We'll definitely give Brent a second to respond to your question there. If not, there are both comments and questions being posted in the chat. And so I guess first we want to say thank you for both the comments and the questions. And again, I'll give Brent here the second chance to say if he wants to say anything. If not, maybe then we can go, and I'm happy to go through and read the questions that have been posted, and then us as a team, myself, Dan, and Brent, a chance to answer. So, Brent, anything to say before we get into reading the questions and then opening the floor for any additional?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Dan, great job, and just want to thank everyone for coming tonight. We're here to hear your questions. Hopefully partner with you to make this a great project for Chick-fil-A and for the county. And I guess what I am excited to say, I think Dan did mention this is a state-of-the-art drive-through, I guess, principles that we've learned through COVID. We've learned a lot, and without our drive-through success, we honestly been able to take the storm to date through COVID and have been able to serve customers and be, continue to be one of the most caring companies in the world. We want to continue to serve customers in this market. And I just want to work with you here tonight, answer as many questions as we can, and hopefully partner with everyone. So we thank you for being here.
Okay. Dan, do you want me to go through, I guess, and read them?
Yeah, I think that would be, or I have them up. I can go through and address them one by one, as long as I don't see any raised hands. So I think we can address them via chat.
maybe start with the ones in the chat first, and then we can open it up from there.
Sure. Okay, so Charles, sorry if I'm not sure your name here, but
Dan, I would say also, some are just comments that we can certainly take and make note of. So maybe we want to stick to the question. Maybe just stick to the questions first.
Sure. Okay, so from Elizabeth, we have wire 53 parking spaces proposed for a drive-through only use. So briefly mentioned in the presentation, but the idea is to have flexibility to allow for future use of different operations for mobile order pickup and operations like Grubhub and similar. So there'll be customer only spaces, there'll be employee only spaces, there could be mobile order pickup, and like Grubhub. So that's the reason, is just to provide future flexibility. Brent, if you have anything you wanted to add.
Yeah. Third-party delivery and also just having team member space. It takes more employees to operate our drive-through. For those of you who've been through a drive-through through COVID and this dual lane fulfillment or dual lane drive-through, it takes more employees to operate that efficiently. And so we are planning to have parking spaces for our employees as part of this project as well.
Thanks, Brent. From Kimberly, notes that the area was considered priority development due to access to public infrastructure and wouldn't include installing septic. That is correct, Kimberly. It wouldn't include the installation of a septic field or in the form of dry wells and additional pre-treatment facilities. From Noble, what is the modeled Chick-fil-A throughput and what is the peak expectant latency backup for service? What impact has been modeled on the input from Route 2? So I'll start by saying I don't have those numbers in front of me. Brent may be able to speak to some generalities, but what I can tell you is that a part of the development, we will be preparing, or a traffic engineer will be preparing a traffic impact study for the proposed use that will include the impacts to adjacent public roadways based on any additional trips that come to the site. Brent, I don't know if you have any thoughts to add, or if we can just respond via comment after this meeting for the drive-through use.
Yes, I'll just add that in our new service model for drive-throughs, we're trying to have customers through there an 8-minute model. So no one sits in a drive-through lane longer than 8 minutes. And so we have designed and laid out our site plan here with the amount of stack and queue for this an isolated drive-through. So I think the thing to note, this drive-through is isolated from the parking field. And if you're familiar with maybe the Chick-fil-A in Severna Park, it's, the drive-through wraps around the building and is not isolated. So it has the opportunity to be a much more efficient drive-through here for our project here in Arnold.
Great, thanks, Brent. Okay, from Abby, we have a question about why development is being pursued in this area relative to some of the existing infrastructure in and around Route 50. So, Brent, can you speak to the kind of the market and why Chick-fil-A wants to be here?
In my time at Chick-fil-A, we've been looking at this market the whole entire time I've been at Chick-fil-A. I think it's tough to find zone property in this corridor and a piece of property large enough to provide us a drive-through. An isolated drive-through like this with the amount of queue that we want to have to be able to serve customers efficiently. And so we even recently looked at some property in the vicinity. I think there's a bank just to the west there. Looked at that, and it's not big enough for what we're wanting to do. And so finding zone pieces of property that have access to Route 2 is very tough to locate. And so we've been working with the landlord now I think we've been looking at this site for 4 or 5 years. And finally we've got a proposal we think will be very successful here. So.
Thanks, Brent.
Yep.
We have some more general comments. I'll note again that all of these comments will be recorded and responded to. So if I'm skipping over anyone that has more of a comment than a question, and you want to add to it, we can address it in the letter after this. From Anna, we have what traffic studies have been done to examine the impact on Arnold Road, or for those exiting that direction to turn left onto Ritchie Highway, for those turning left off of Route 2 to enter Arnold Road, and to try to U-turn onto Route 2 to go to Chick-fil-A. Each of these will create enormous traffic issues. So, Anna, thank you for your concern. As I mentioned, we will have a traffic engineer prepare a traffic impact study. It's ongoing currently, actually, and Each of those movements at every light and intersection will be analyzed for the existing trips today, as well as any additional trips. And we'll go through the appropriate review channels through the county and the state highway administration in order to mitigate any impacts to those movements that you've specifically mentioned. From Noble, again, I think related to traffic, the model capacity exit onto Arnold Road, how's it been assessed? So again, that would be included as a part of the traffic impact study. From Stephen, we have, will or won't the drive-through just back up as folks have to wait to exit right onto Ritchie Highway? So no, we hope not, and that will be a part of analyzing it. But the idea is that the isolated acceleration lane, in addition to what is already a merge lane, and then the 2 through lanes will allow free flow of traffic exiting the site and ample room for them to merge. From Larry Castro, we have, what is the purpose of the recently installed silt fence on the proposed development site, given that this project has not yet been approved by Arnold County? Sure. So Larry, as a part of the due diligence for this site, we prepared a perk test to assist with the septic design. So that required equipment to be brought onto the site to test the perk, or essentially the cross section of the ground, the dirt and clay, and how fast water could infiltrate and where water was found. This all ties into the design. So while not yet approved for development, that was a part of due diligence. From Becky and Danny, we have, who is the franchise owner behind this location? Brent could, I'm sure, tell you more about the process, but I can tell you that there's no franchisee at this time. And if the project were to move forward at some point near the end of the permitting process and during construction, Chick-fil-A would look to identify a franchisee for the location.
That's correct, Dan. Typically, we would advertise or open that up for interviews 12 to 14 months before opening. We start locating our operator.
Thanks, Brent. From Deborah, please expand on stormwater management requirements. What are they? Sure. So we are required to meet both quality and quantity standards for stormwater management through, as reviewed by the county. The quality portion of the design centers around the amount of impervious area added to the site, and that equates to a volume that needs to be treated. So the practices that are proposed are the ideal practices preferred by the state of Maryland. They're called environmental site designs, and the acronym is ESD to the MEP, so environmental site design to the maximum extent practicable. So we'll be required to meet treatment of a certain rainfall depth for the proposed impervious. With the new impervious, the flow from the site would, as people have noted, typically increase. The other piece of the stormwater management is quantity management. That requires us to hold back the water on the site and release it at a rate that is equal to or less than what is happening during the existing condition for all design storms. From Sue Riccardi for Arnold Preservation Council, are you planning to request a zoning change for the R2 portion? So a zoning request to rezone the sliver of R2 land that is between the C3 and the forest conservation was submitted and is going through the general development plan a rezoning process. I can tell you the site layout that we shared with you today is based on the current zoning of the site, and that rezoning was requested basically to provide flexibility for various site amenities in the future. We have another question from Steve Kendall related to traffic. I appreciate your concern. I will just point to my previous answer that we will be preparing a licensed traffic engineer will be preparing a traffic impact study to understand all the impacts to the adjacent intersections and specific movements that have been highlighted in your comment, and mitigation may be required. From Sue Riccardi, again, we have, what is the timeline for construction? I think, I guess I don't know the exact timeline. I think, it would be, if you ask Brent when we would like to construct, it'd be as soon as possible. So, be required to get through the permitting process. But, us being at the community meeting now, we still have a long way to go through the Arnold County process. So, in an ideal world, somewhere in the 1.5 year range would be when construction begins. We have a question from Jean Nardi saying removal of the large trees in the green space will affect how wind and storms impact the Ashcroft neighborhood. Also very concerned about runoff from the change in slope for the project. How are we addressing these issues? So I'll address the runoff portion first. So as I noted, we're required to provide quantity management, which will reduce the runoff down to the existing condition or less. And related to wind and potential impacts for removing of the existing trees on site. The site was, I guess what I'll say is we have, to go through the county review process. All these comments and considerations will be taken into account. But it is a commercially zoned piece of property that may be developed one day with or without Chick-fil-A. Have there been any studies done, from Deborah Smith, any studies done on the impacts to the residents downslope from the development, basement, such as basement flooding? If not, what happens? What recourse do residents have? What will be the impact on the B&A trail? So again, we're required to meet stormwater management requirements by the county to reduce the flow leaving the site. So we would not anticipate increasing flow to the adjacent residencies. From Larry Sells, why can't public sewer be connected if this is a priority versus septic? So I think there are future plans for sewer to potentially be run to this area, but not in the immediate future, and would basically inhibit the development of this site. So septic was required to be provided. I see a couple people with their hands up now, so I'm gonna just save my spot here, since I said I would let the people talk who wanted to get their voice out there. So I have Kimberly Cornett. I'm gonna unmute you here. I guess ask to unmute and feel free to ask your question.
Hi, thanks for this presentation and being available to answer our questions. I have to be honest, I live in a split household. I'm a vegetarian, so I was hoping for like Jersey Mike's. Everybody who is under 18 in my house is super excited. So with that disclaimer, Brent, I understand that like the drive-through model is highly efficient and probably quite lucrative for your business, but it is a total zero for our communities, both because of the traffic issues that my neighbors have raised, but also because directly behind the proposed site, you have several hundred kids who will be very excited, like my teenagers probably, to visit Chick-fil-A. And a drive-through only model doesn't provide them the opportunity to go sit at the restaurant. There is no walking path that is being proposed. Many of our kids walk to the CVS that's on the corner. That road is very highly trafficked. We got lots and lots of bikers crossing it. So, you know, you are trying to build a business in a location that is zoned commercial, but my resistance would be to strongly to a drive-through only model, because I don't think that you're really providing anything but commuters and people going to the beach or driving, you know, 50 or 60 miles an hour, you know, down Route 2, any additive amenities. So, you know, if you were talking about a restaurant with, you know, tables similar to, you know, what's in Severna Park, you know, there could be some community benefit, but you really have to think about who you're trying to serve, and that doesn't appear to be our neighborhoods.
Well, thank you, Kimberly, for your concept. Brent, do you want to?
Sure.
Yeah.
Kimberly, thanks for your comments. I want to make sure everyone understands the DTO and what that is. It does not have indoor seating, but that operation model does allow us to serve curbside mobile order pickup customers. And you know, due to the size of the site and the operational needs, this site does not lend itself toward a full-size restaurant. And because of all the forest con issues, tree, you know, all the specimen trees and all those things, our team looked very hard at that early in our design process, and we have gone to where to make this project viable for our business is that having this DTO model is the best model. We do have an outdoor seating area, I think Dan proposed, and you can have walk-up orders. So there is a part of this DTO, you have a walk-up window. So you can, if you wanted to walk up and order something, you can. You just will not be able to go inside the restaurant and eat your meal. Okay, I just want to make sure, Kimberly, you understand that. Now, regarding the rest of your comments around things, community needs and things, I think we'll take notes of that. I appreciate you sharing that. And our design team will look at that through our approval process. So we appreciate your comments.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brent, I'll just add, there is within the width of our improvements, you are proposing a sidewalk along the frontage, but understood that it's not, you know, the most, you know, easily traversed through the entrances. So yeah, we'll, like Brent said, we will look at that. So thank you. Cindy Wilford also has her hand raised. If you would like to unmute and ask your question.
Hi, my name is Lee Walford. Cindy Walford's my wife. We're using her account tonight on Zoom. We live at 103 Charlton Way. We're the home that's going to have the bright headlights flashing right into our back of our home, immediately buttressing up to the property. We moved here this is more of a comment, but a question for Brent as well. We moved here in 2014. I'm a retired Air Force Chief Master Sergeant. I work with the Department of Veterans Affairs now. My wife is a senior executive retired from the federal law enforcement community. We have another family in this community that's a senior executive level, folks that have retired to this neighborhood specifically. And one of the big saving graces for purchasing this property in 2014 was not only the trail nearby and the amenities, we had lived in Arnold before, but was the beautiful woods right behind our home. So I know that as engineers, Andrew and Dan, you're paid to be objective, and I get it. You have to use objective criteria, objective obligations to meet your customers' requirement. But this is more for Brent. There is a subjectivity, not just objectivity, to a lot of the questions that are being raised today. The traffic issues, yes. The safety issues, yes. Although we knew this place could be developed behind us, there's also the subjective piece, and that's a concern that this property may impact our resale value of some of the homes in the neighborhood and the overall home properties. And it's causing us to reconsider whether we're going to stay here long term, since we are going to be potentially losing that parcel out back. So there is a human cost to this too, and concerns that are at a subjective level. As the president of Arnold Manor Homeowners Association, I represent the 4 other dwellings that are immediately behind this. Universally, people are objecting to this on not only on traffic reasons, property value reasons, but also environmental concerns as well. So we just want you to know that there are concerns apart from some of the objectively based questions. And I got to tell you, as a comment, I don't know how the hell you guys got septic approved as far as your plan, but because that has been an emphasis point in this part of Anne Arundel County and been briefed multiple times for Anne Arundel County senior leadership and our congressional staffs as well. So, and the effect, of course, on not only Severn River, but the Chesapeake. So Brent, that's just a concern from a subjective perspective. And oh, by the way, I have a cousin, Eddie Halliday, that owns 2 Chick-fil-A's in Knoxville, Tennessee, and a cousin, Gene Rhodes, that owns Chick-fil-A in High Point. It is a very good company. I have no problem with it. I think you guys do a great job in your service to the community. Just not my backyard. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. Brent, you can feel free to chime in, but I'll just start and say I know you can have seen the plan, but I would just like to highlight, the open space area of 80 feet that is between your property and the proposed Chick-fil-A area will be maintained with dense forest. In addition to that, a 25-foot landscape buffer on the Chick-fil-A site is required. And we have increased that buffer to range between 30 and 50 feet from previous iterations. And going back a comment, we've looked at full-size restaurants on this site and tried to get them to work. So, we look to maintain all the specimen trees on the western side of the property, or the bottom side of the plan that you guys had seen. So there will be approximately 120 feet of densely forested area between the residencies and the property or the proposed development. So I just wanted to flag that, and in case I know you've seen the plan, but didn't have a chance to scale it out. And Brent, I don't know if you want to add anything, but again, appreciate your comment.
And Dan, if I can, one more last thing. It would be considered, perhaps they'll consider an additional wall structure or plantings to complement what the natural buffer is as well. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, I think that's everyone who has their hand raised. We do have many questions below still. I'm going to do my best to get through them, but like I said, I would like to be respectful of everyone's time. So if there are questions that we do not get to, these will all be documented and responded to, and everyone who attended tonight's meeting and provided their information, their address, we will be sending you a copy of the meeting notes as well as responses to all of the questions. We have another question about the traffic study. So no, we have not prepared a full traffic study yet. Preliminary investigations have been completed, but we are in the process of preparing a full traffic impact study. From Lauren, does a more efficient drive-through create more traffic? No, quite the opposite. I think it will circulate traffic through the drive-through more quickly. It does not mean that just because the drive-through is faster, it will make more people come. It will just get them through the site more quickly and not impacting adjacent roadways. We have a question from Becky and Danny about how many customers do we expect to serve daily? Brent, do you have any?
That's a great question. I'm not sure how many will serve daily. We'll come back and answer that one. How about that? I think I'll be shooting from the hip on that. So let me come back on that one, Dan.
Okay. Yep. Like I said, we'll be responding to all these questions individually. Do we expect stacking of cars on Route 2? Sorry, that's from Sue Riccardi. No, we do not expect stacking within the drive-through, in the isolated drive-through area separate from the site. 36 or approximately 36 cars can stack, and then there's an additional large distance before you would get to any public right of way. So somewhere in the 50 car range. typical existing Chick-fil-A's that you see today sometimes have as little as 15, and some have, you know, up to 25 and 30, but this is as Brent noted, kind of the top of the line drive-through in order to make sure that that does not happen. We have additional comments about the traffic study that appear to be mostly comments. So again, we will review those and certainly appreciate everyone's concern. Will the traffic study be available for the public to see when it is completed? To be honest, I don't know the answer to that question. Andrew, can you speak to that? Is that public record of the submission?
Yeah. I mean, anything that is submitted is of public record, and so yeah, anybody can request a copy, and that, you know, that can be shared. Yeah, once it's submitted, it's a public record.
Got it. Thank you. Yep. So yeah, anyone who would like to see the traffic study that's prepared can request it, and it will be provided. What species from Christian we have, what species of trees will be taken down, and what types of impact will this have on potential flooding and soil erosion of the surrounding homes? So the species of trees we do have, we have completed a forest stand delineation as well as a appraisal of the existing trees. I do not have it in front of me. I'll include it with our responses, but I can tell you I think 3 of the 4 trees are one species and the other one is something different. Related to flooding and erosion, will be, you know, as I previously mentioned, will be required to meet all quantity management to reduce, you know, the flow leaving the site back to existing conditions or less. We have a question from USA 231. Would like to ask Chick-fil-A how this new drive-through only store maintains their corporate positive attributes like hospitality, service, general pleasant dining experience. Would also say there's not a need, or certainly not a need, for an additional store in the area, and how a brick building would fit into the Arnold station aesthetic, and comments related to the time of queue in the drive-through. So, Brent, can you speak to the first portion?
Sure. And looking at, as far as our corporate positive attributes, I mean, operating a DTO versus a restaurant, it'd be very much the same. We're still gonna have our same level of service on how we serve customers. I think the only thing as a customer you would not see is you're not able to sit down inside the restaurant. Every mode of I guess food delivery and service will be at this location except dining in. And so I would not expect it to be any different in regards to how we serve customers and care for customers. Okay. And the second question, well, there's really not a need for additional store. We believe there is. I mean, this is a huge investment and part of Chick-fil-A to want to continue to be part of the community. But also this site, if you look at it, this is not the easiest site to develop. And we believe it's important enough for being in this community to actually invest and be part of the community and develop this piece of property. It's already commercially zoned. And we feel like that this is a great opportunity for us to continue to serve customers in the market and continue to provide that level of service. Other restaurants in the area in the market are busting at the seams. And so we're trying to provide more opportunities for customers to be served by Chick-fil-A. So I'll go on to the third one, the brick building. We can definitely work with the community and with the county and look at our aesthetics of our building. I think what we provide is a standard building, brick building for Chick-fil-A. So we can definitely look at that. and try to make sure we are part of the community and everyone feels like we're blending with what's consistent in the community. And then the last question about 8 minutes, and I can't say I don't agree with you. Sometimes I'd rather use the app and do carry out as well. So that's a great comment.
Awesome. Thanks, Brent. I'm going to switch back to some of the people with their hands raised as we're running out of time here. So we've got 25 Ashcroft, if you would like to unmute and ask your question.
This is John Galati at 25 Ashcroft. Will the traffic study project how many accidents are likely to occur from the drive-through emptying to a 4-lane into 2 merge, and how many will result from traffic backing up at the U-turn point? And if it does, how many accidents are the cutoff for Chick-fil-A to not want to build here?
Sure. Appreciate your concern and question, having driven out there. And I don't believe the traffic study would highlight a specific number of expected accidents. What I can tell you is the way that it is prepared is based on a level of service and providing adequate public facility. So if there's a specific movement, say it's the U-turn movement, coming northbound on Route 2 and you want to go to Chick-fil-A, if that movement queues through a certain amount of light cycles, the level of service for that specific movement could be graded at an F, for example, and mitigation would be required in the form of, could be safety measures or widening, or there's a number of things that could be done. In addition to that, just related to safety measures in general, this review will be reviewed by both county and state, and they're aware of the accidents and or traffic issues at the intersection, and they will have approval authority over any improvements.
Yeah, my concern was for the southbound having to turn northbound after, that's the only direction they can go because most of the residential would require a U-turn.
Right. So yeah, the acceleration lane there will be designed per SHA standard, and they're going to review it for safety and traffic, and they're not going to let us build an unsafe condition.
Yeah, but the U-turn was an uncontrolled area. I mean, you pull off, you wait for traffic to clear, then you make your U-turn. That's where I hope the traffic study extends to, because of, it's not in the immediate vicinity, but a natural consequence.
Mm-hmm. Dan, I'll also add, that intersection south will be studied. The other point to make is that while people can turn right and make that U-turn, there is a connection through the CVS. And so folks can go, through leave Chick-fil-A through the CVS parking lot and access that signal as well, and make the left rather than use that U-turn. But to Dan's point, that, those movements and the additional traffic will be studied at all the access points surrounding the site.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have John Michaels. Feel free to unmute. And oh, sorry, John, it appears you're still not coming through. Let's see. It does say you're unmuted. If you would like to call in via the cell provided, we can come back to you, unless you have a mic you can fix. In the meantime, if Alexandra Gallimore would like to go, we'd appreciate it.
Hi, thank you. Thank you guys for holding this meeting. It is appreciated by far for all the communities to be able to speak and get their concerns heard. I do have a major concern about those 2 driveways right after the merge lane ends, after this green space that you're trying to rezone for. Those 2 driveways start right there. We're talking about children and new teenage drivers, and we already have a huge problem right now. Those poor kids have to go through somebody else's drive to go through Ashcroft to get to a bus stop because they can't access a bus stop now. What is this traffic going to do? Like, you keep talking about an acceleration lane onto the road. Is that going to go right in front of these people's driveways?
Sure. So appreciate your comment, Alexandra. So yes, if you're referring to the 2 single-family residencies that are on the right side of southbound Route 2.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So as you know, the existing road has 2 through lanes that are maintained through the intersection and along. There is also an existing merge lane, which kind of ends in an awkward position before people have time to merge. And I know that's been a concern of some. So the proposed improvements would include extending that 3rd lane past the 2nd driveway. So through
Is that
again,
legal?
in front of both of them. So again, this is, I mean, it's part of SHA right of way, and the improvements will have to be approved by the State Highway Administration. And again, all of the concerns you brought up regarding safety will be reviewed by them.
Well, okay, I'll kind of continue on from that. So where does Chick-fil-A, as a highly family value-based company, feel about intruding on these people's entrance to their home?
I guess, Brian, I see you unmuted if you want to speak to that.
Sure. I mean, we're not going to, we have to go through a process through State Highway where there's professional engineers and staff that review highway improvements. And we're not going to, first of all, they're not going to approve something that they don't deem as safe, nor will we want to do something that is deemed not safe by that approving authority. So we trust the process. Alexander, I guess is how I'll say that. There's a permitting and approval process we'll go through, and we'll have to address their comments to be able to build those improvements.
Okay, I understand that. I mean, I'm just gonna hammer this home, guys. I'm sorry, but I don't even know these people personally. I'm just looking at this from the standpoint that if I lived in one of those houses and you're telling me you want to develop and extend your acceleration lane, and the merge lane is going to go in front of my driveway, and then possibly the green space next to me is going to be rezoned and you might be expanding. I don't understand how a company that says they believe in family values is okay with this whatsoever. It's just contradictory.
Thanks for your comments. We'll definitely look at it a little closer. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, we have, I see, I mean, John, you're back. Are you able to?
I think maybe I fixed it.
Yes, you did.
Outstanding. Thanks for fielding my question. I'm curious if Chick-fil-A has performed any studies sort of similar to maybe a traffic study or something on what the impact of putting a restaurant in has on the adjacent communities. So like, is there a value add for those communities? Like, do people see it as desirable? And is there any kind of study that you've done where you maybe do evaluations of home prices over the period of time, before and after studies and that kind of thing? And then a sort of attack onto that question. So maybe part 2 would be similar in terms of, so you sort of would have a host neighborhood to some degree. And there have been comments about, how would you pay into the neighborhood? So the county's reached out to the neighborhood to install sewer to help the neighborhood get off of septic systems, also sort of in the interest of, green initiatives. Is it the kind of thing that Chick-fil-A would be able to subsidize some of the sewer into the neighborhood to, sort of being a good neighbor sort of gesture? Thank you.
Thanks, John, for your comment and concern. I can, I guess, take a crack at the sewer piece first, and then Brent, if you want to speak to any experience you've had with the initial part of the comment, you can do so. But related to the sewer, the site will have to be located in a future, as you've noted, into a future service area for sewer, and then it has to be planned in order to be approved to have the sewer extended to this location. I think Brent would agree with me, and I know that I would prefer that it had public sewer, and I think that the cost of the septic in itself is a large one. So if there were an opportunity to contribute some amount equivalent to the septic design, I'm sure it would be something we would consider. However, we need to coordinate. It's not just up to us. We need to make sure that it's on the county's plan and can be done. So that's one. And then Brent, do you have any experience with analyzing, I guess, value?
We typically don't. I think the research that we do is we look at market needs, how we serve markets, and we look at sales on existing restaurants and markets in which we're not maybe serving customers like we want. So, John, I can't say I can speak. We do a study and see how it impacts property values or things like that. But we do study markets to make sure we're going to be in a position to be a long-term part of the community and serve customers long-term. And so we believe this is a market for Chick-fil-A in which we can do that.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Okay, we have, I apologize again for, I want to be able to answer everyone's questions, but I know we have now over 100 messages, but I want to answer anyone who still has their hand up and then try to wrap the call. So we have Torlados. So if you want to unmute and go ahead and ask your question or comment.
Good evening, and thanks so much for hosting this tonight. My question, excuse me, my question has to do with stormwater runoff. I'm a resident in Pines on the Severn, the community behind the proposed site, and we are very sensitive to what happens with impervious surfaces after large rains, and how that affects our really fragile ecosystem of the Severn River that eventually makes its way to the Chesapeake Bay, as you know. So my question has to do with, for this development, the amount of land that is currently percolating water, natural surfaces, that will be disturbed by impervious surfaces such as pavement. Have there been any studies about the impact this will have on the surrounding waterways of the Severn River and then the Chesapeake Bay from there?
Sure. Thank you for your comment and concern there. So I guess I would just start by saying that the state of Maryland is really at the forefront in the country for because of the Chesapeake Bay, to your point, of managing stormwater runoff and the impacts from development. So I think I talked a little bit about it before, and I would say that the specific to your groundwater recharge and the actual flow leaving the site from a rainfall event, as you've noted, when we go to develop the site, we're going to be required to do stormwater calculations that require us to provide groundwater recharge and equivalent to what's being done today. In addition to that, we will look at rainfall events that equate to, if you're familiar with a 100-year storm, or essentially a large storm that's a low probability of happening. And we design the site in such a way that the water or the flow leaving the site at any given time is less than or equal to what exists today. So that will be accomplished via underground storage with control structures, as well as the microbiome retention facilities. In terms of quality and the impacts to the adjacent waterways, such as the Severn River and Chesapeake Bay, the quality management of the site is these facilities, through introducing various types of media and filtration, will reduce all pollutant levels such as nitrogen, phosphorus, sediment to at or below existing condition levels. The guidelines were, set forth by the state in order to preserve the Chesapeake Bay. So while not specific to this site, I can tell you that yes, those things have been considered, and the design will meet those standards.
Dan, I appreciate that answer, that response. Thank you. I do, still am concerned that any surface that, previously is a natural surface that filters our stormwater being replaced by a a surface that won't do that is still a very large concern of mine, studies aside, but appreciate that response. Thank you.
Sure, I appreciate, yeah, thank you for your question. We have one more person with their hand raised. If we'll answer that question and then we can adjourn here shortly. So Elizabeth Roseborg, do you want to unmute?
Thank you. Thank you. My question is in regards to the modification requests. You have a modification request to cut down specimen trees to facilitate an acceleration lane that was addressed a little bit earlier and going past the 2 residents. If that modification is not approved, how will that change your site plan?
Sure, that's a great question. So we would, I guess the answer is we have 2 governing agencies reviewing the plans. You know, SHA will have their opinion about what we need to do to meet, you know, the safety and, you know, traffic requirements for this development. And then Anne Arundel County has their own about environmental features and the modifications associated with removing them. So if those trees were not able to be removed, we would investigate with SHA if there are alternative practices to provide a safe exit from the site. We could potentially introduce walls or other features that could protect the trees around it. So at this time, we haven't done the full design, so I can't give you a definitive answer, but I think it would be working with both reviewing agencies to see if anything could be done.
Okay, two follow-on questions. This is your preliminary community meeting, and then there is a final. Would you be able to do a another community meeting once all these things are answered in regards to the traffic study, to SHA, to specimen modification tree and everything else? Because sometimes we have these meetings at the very beginning and the very end, and obviously a lot of things change in between. Could we call and ask if you would be willing to do a 3rd meeting, although the county only requires 2?
Yeah, appreciate that question and that suggestion. I think, you know, we would certainly be willing to, and at an appropriate time, meet with the community again. You know, as Brent mentioned, he wants to be a partner here and work with the community. So I can't speak to exactly when would make the most sense for that to happen, but I think that we'll be in consistent contact with those of you who joined tonight. As I mentioned, we'll be following up with responses to all of your questions, and you will have an opportunity to respond in kind at future meetings. So I think, something we'll certainly consider and appreciate the thought.
Thank you. One final question before I know you're going to let Amanda speak. If everything goes according to plan in this perfect world, what is your anticipated opening target timeline?
Sure, I can let Brent speak to that if you have it off the top, Brent.
Yes. We foresee this project opening in fall of 2023. So it'd be about 2 years from now, time we get through our development process and construction. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Brent. Again, I haven't had a chance to scroll through everyone's questions. I know, Elizabeth, you mentioned Amanda maybe chiming in. Amanda, if you do have anything you wanted to add, feel free. But if not, like I said, we will be we'll have all these questions recorded and be providing responses to them and mailing them out to everyone who joined tonight, as long as you've provided your contact information.
Yeah, I'm happy to just really quickly make a few comments, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah, so I feel for you because I've been trying to scroll through and type, and then I get lost in the comments. So anyone who would like me to answer a specific question, please feel free to reach out to me via email. I did want to make a note. Someone asked about the planned connection. The planned connection and the PFA map happened quite a few years ago, probably before Chick-fil-A was even looking at this site. And the only way that a community would pay for connection out of their own pocket, aside from what you would pay if the county does it in taxes, would be for a petition process from your community. And that's when the individual homeowners absorb the cost of connecting in partnership with the county. So there's two different processes, and I just want to make sure that they're not getting confused here. I do want to encourage the residents that are on this Zoom meeting to continue to stay involved. I did anticipate a lot of concern about traffic, specifically the intersection at Arnold Road. And this is something that I shared with Brent in a previous discussion. And I know that they are taking that information and we'll have to go through the process of traffic study. And I just want to thank everybody for being involved and taking the time out of your evening to sit here and participate. I know everyone's very busy and I appreciate it. But again, just reach out to me if you have any questions about the process. And just in closing, the County Council will not review these plans. This goes through Office of Planning and Zoning, and because of the State Highway Administration, their rules and regulations. So I will not have an opportunity to vote up or down on this as a council member, just so that everyone understands that process. And thank you for letting me make a few comments. Appreciate it.
Sure thing. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know we in the community certainly appreciate it. So with that, I think we're going to wrap here. I just want to thank everyone again for joining. It was an awesome showing. I know a lot of these had community meetings where no one showed up. So it's great to see the passion in the community and the willingness to work with Chick-fil-A to make this site work. So I'll say it once more, this meeting has been recorded, will be posted to the Anne Arundel County website, and you'll be given, I think it's 14 days to provide any additional comment, and we will be responding to all the comments that were posted. So thank you guys, and have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.